This is not a devlog. This is a devlog.
Alright, I'm back again. Thought you got rid of me, didn't ya? This was going to be monthly. Maybe it's been a month. Maybe it's been 6 weeks. I don't know. Let's talk about making games.
And this time I've set up 2 cameras. I've got one over there to try and engage you with different camera angles. And it's also so I can show off my lovely new merchandise. Fail and fast and find and fun. My strategy for merchandise on this channel is to make incredibly niche game design in-jokes that probably only about 10 people in the world will get. That is both a true observation about the weakness of my business strategy and also a way of marketing to the 10 people who do get this so that they will buy the t-shirt because it will make them feel clever, because I just said only the special people will get it. That's you, the special person there that understands the joke. I feel so connected to you right now. Anyway, what have I been up to? Well, I've had this weird hobby project going on, which is like a Spelunky type roguelike platformer, but throwing in some of the drafting elements that made Blueprints so cool. Today I want to take you through what I've done, why I've done it the way I've done it, and hopefully you can learn something from that. You know, you can learn from my mistakes, you can learn from my experience, or you can feel validated if you're doing the same thing and you think, oh, well, he's doing it and he knows everything. I've also promised that because I am a games educator, or I try to be at least occasionally on this channel, that these devlogs will have a bit of a theme each time I do them. And the theme this time is iteration cycles, and the phrase that has been butchered on this wonderful t-shirt design, fail fast and find the fun. This is a phrase that the first few times I heard it in a professional context in my first job in a game studio, I used to cringe at it. It sounded like just an annoying slogan, but it is really a kind of important thing to internalize as a game designer. And that is because your job is, believe it or not, to make someone else have fun. There's lots of things that can make a game more fun, but fundamentally you are designing an interaction, you're designing an activity, you're designing something for someone to do. And in order for that activity that you're asking someone to sit down at the computer or at the games console and do to not be a waste of their time, you need to consider, what are they getting out of this? Is it like a tactile experience of, you know, smashing things feels fun? Or is it a intellectual experience of solving puzzles or something like that? Game design is fundamentally all about chasing that. If you're working on your own, you need to be able to do the hands-on bit, you need to be able to write the code or do whatever to put the game together, but you can spend as long as you want on it, and if it doesn't end up in an experience that is fun for someone to interact with, then you have taken a long time to fail, which is what Fail Fast and Find the Fun is about. Because if you don't go after the fun and you just decide that you're going to make this game and you're going to spend 3 years on it and no one ever plays it and carry on steaming ahead with this idea that you've got, you have no idea that the thing is fun, because fun is about interactions, not how good the initial idea was. So I'm going to give you a quick tour of some aspects of this project now. I'm not going to get super technical here because this is not a Game Maker video. The whole point of this is not to advertise Game Maker or to get into a debate with some nerds about which game engine they like most, because there's a bunch of nerds out there that like to argue about stuff like that instead of actually getting on with making their games. What I want to do is just take you through a couple of elements of this project and talk about iteration. So here is the game in its current state. It is looking a lot more polished than the last time you saw it, but it still has a lot of bugs. And the reason for that is that I have been iterating on the things I need to test most. So there are game mechanics here where it's really crucial to find out if they work or not. I've really tried to focus my building and my testing on proving out those game mechanics and other elements. You know, I've done a lot more to sort of develop my style in pixel art, because I'm not really a pixel artist, or I haven't been in the past. That background, that room background, was done with a tablet. and the rest was done in Game Maker in the sprite editor. There are still a bunch of bugs here. The way that the main character Lem carries objects doesn't look perfect all the time, especially with this axe, which is a new thing. And I have some collision bugs still, but at the moment I can play the game and get a good feel for it with those bugs in place. So I will come back to those types of things and try and tighten them up every so often. But what I'm not going to do is spend 2 or 3 days rewriting all of that code until I know that the rest of the game works, because fundamentally I know it would be better if that bug didn't exist, but it is not crucial at this stage to me iterating and finding the fun in the game. You can pick up objects, you can throw the objects, you can throw them in a high arc if you press up and throw, and you can like set them down gently, and then there's a sprint button, and that is really all there is. You've got keys as a resource up in the top, and those are used to open the doors. So yeah, that's where I'm getting my blueprints influence here. You are basically going through the level just trying to collect loot at the moment, so I don't have the kind of mid to long term game loop of what you do with that treasure yet. I have a very good idea of what that is in my head, and I will save that for a future video. What I've been working on most in the last couple of weeks is trying to give these rooms a different character, because in a drafting game where you're picking rooms, the player has to be able to learn what's in them and what use they are. And at the moment, we've got these kind of grey-purple sort of urban looking rooms that are our generic rooms. They spawn those kind of treasure jars that you get your coins out of, and a couple of other things. And they are just generally okay to put down. And then we have green rooms that are like forest themed. They do not have much in them yet. I've just started working on that. But the thing I've spent the most time on in the last week is these red rooms, and these are basically where the peril in the game comes from. My protagonist has changed from a knight to a golem called Lem. And the reason I made that change is that I wanted this game to be puzzly, not super focused on combat. And the thing about having a character that's a knight is when you see a knight, you expect to be doing lots and lots of swordplay. Now, I have added in health and damage in the last week or so, but you can't really fight stuff all the time. You have to use items that you find in the environment, and that kind of opens the game up to be more about learning what you find in each room and kind of making the drafting meaningful. So if I take this axe, throw it in there, and we can use that to kind of whack those bats. Is it really a Metroidvania if you don't have a room made of meat and a spooky bat creature with no eyes? I don't know. So yeah, the red rooms basically have sort of nasty fungal alien spreading thing. The hatcheries, which is like a subtype of red rooms, have these eggs in, and you can also try and get rid of the eggs. So you can like burn them with a torch, you can throw them down a hole, or you can wait for them to hatch and then kill them with the axe. You can't kill the eggs with the axe. There's basically all of these little rules of what works on what, and the core of the game would be about like learning and applying those rules.
Imitation loops?
What? Iteration loops. An iterative process is a process where you design something over and over again. So you have a theory about what you can do to your game to make it better. You test that theory as quickly as possible by, changing the game to see if that theory holds out. And then from there, you reevaluate and you go through another cycle. It's a cycle. Iteration is a cycle of theorize, test, evaluate, do it all again.
All right.
Well, yeah, a little bit of that. Like, the longer you've been making games, the better your intuition is. So you're more likely to get it right earlier if you've been practicing making games for a long time. But you're still never going to get it right the first time. The thing is that game design has a lot of what we call second order problems in it, which means that you don't know what's going to happen until it happens because of all of these knock-on effects. Because, a game is usually quite a complex system. There's all of these mechanics. It's why we call them mechanics. They're interlocking like gears in a machine. And you just don't know what effects they're going to have when you put them together until you've put them together, because it's just too much of a dynamic relationship between all of those things. Generally speaking, the worst types of games that I see are the ones where the game developer has just rushed to get every part of a game in, and they haven't really finessed or polished any of them. You've got the core gameplay, and then you've got the shop and the inventory system and all of these other things, and none of them feel particularly good. So what I would rather do is get the core of the game feeling good enough that I know that if I continue to work on the game, all of the other stuff will be worth it.
So you don't have a startup menu or a pause menu or anything like that in your game yet?
No, I don't, because those things aren't fun.
But you're going to need them at some point, so you might as well put them in now, right?
So if I ever plan to sell this game and ask people to spend money on it, then yes, it will need a pause menu and a start screen and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm not starting from the assumption that this needs to be sold. I'm starting from the assumption that I need to... Say it with me. Because I'm of the opinion that there is no point attempting to commercially release a game unless I think it's really good.
Well, that sounds like a waste of time. Spending all that time making a game and then not even selling it.
Has anyone ever told you that you're getting increasingly Australian? Every project I work on teaches me something. I get quicker at it, I get quicker at doing the technical side, the art side, making judgments about the game design. That's inherently valuable. You want what you make to be good, and the only way to tell if it's good is to not prematurely spend your time doing things like pause menus. I think you're wrong. I think pause menus can be very exciting. I mean, talking about the pause menu is a very extreme example, right? But I'm sure if you're making a game now, you can apply this principle to whatever you're doing. If you have a good idea of the type of enjoyment your player is supposed to get out of your game, whether it is, being immersed in a fantasy world, whether it is puzzle solving or doing some kind of strategic thinking, you're going to be better positioned to sort of point yourself in the direction of the fun, so you can go and find it. So you can sort of sniff about and go, is there any fun over here? That kind of thing. And some of what I've shown you is me following that principle, because I know that a platformer with room drafting could be fun. I know that I like both of those things, and the game design really, and where the iteration comes in, is working out how to get those things to fit together. Because it's one thing to just kind of take two types of thing that you like and go, well, I like both of these things, so I'll put them together. It's another to go through that looping process of trying to work out where these ideas stitch together. So I showed you, for example, ways that I've played around with the platforming and the item carrying and throwing mechanics in order to make the room drafting kind of have a meaning and have something for players to think about. Because eventually they're going to be able to learn which items generally spawn in which rooms, and then sort of plan where to put the rooms down. At the moment, they can't do that because the rooms don't all have that kind of learnable quality. So I've got all of these things that I need to juggle, and whenever I'm sort of sitting thinking about what should I do next, what should I test in my next iteration loop, that is the space that I'm always kind of pointing myself towards, because I know platformers work. I know people like to make a little dude jump around on a screen. I know that room drafting can work. I've played Blueprints. I've played a lot of the board games that inspired it. I like those things. And the design space I'm exploring is actually in all of the potential connections between those things. So every time I have an idea for a mechanic that's like a generic thing, I try to put it to one side until I know it's time to test it. So for example, I didn't put the damage hearts into this game until about a week ago. I've been working on this game for 2 months, and part of the reason for that is that I just know that mechanic works. I've seen it in enough games that, having enemies that hurt you and having a way to fight them back, I know that's fun. But you can really slow yourself down quite a bit if you kind of try and throw in the kitchen sink of like everything the game eventually needs right at the start. That's not what prototyping is. Prototyping is being selective about what you're testing so that you can iterate on it quickly and then more quickly get to the point where you can say, yeah, that's good, let's keep going in that direction, or no, put it in the bin. And all of this is part of the reason why I encourage people, when you're first getting into game dev, to try not to see what you're doing as a commercial thing and try to see it as a hobby and a pastime and see what you're doing as learning projects. Because when you're right at the start of that process, you're not going to be fast enough at implementing things to quickly get to a stage where what you're doing is really good. You will get faster if you're practicing for like hours and hours every week. You'll get much faster at testing your ideas out very quickly. But that comes with time and it comes with a lot of practice. This is part of why people tell you to make small games. It's so that you have less to do. And it's not because they want the games you make to be small. It's because they want the games you make to be good. And the only way for a game to be good is for each part of the game to have been iterated on lots of times in order to really work out if it works. If your game has 10 parts rather than 3 parts and you want to complete it in a year or two, then you're either going to have to cut a lot of corners or you're going to have to cut a lot of features. And I will always be an advocate on this channel for people aiming to do something that is polished, people aiming to do something that is good. And the only way to do that is by having these quick iteration cycles. If you've been working in a game engine for a few years, you know it like the back of your hand, you're going to be able to iterate very quickly. And that means that you can be more experimental with your designs. It means you can be more ambitious with how many features you put in your games. If you are just starting out, you need to practice in order to get faster. And that is part of why people tell you to make small games. It's not because we don't believe in you, it is because we know that if you make a game with less features, you will be able to focus more on iterating on those features and making them better. And the goal should be to eventually make good games, not just make whatever slop you're capable of at the time and then release it. I've basically got to a stage now where I've got a big to-do list of things that I can do, but mentally I go through this process of like, is this what I need to focus on now? Because I know what the metagame of this game will be. I know what the player will be doing with those coins that they collect and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm not implementing any of that until I know that this basic activity of what you're doing for 10 minutes is fun. So far, what I've done feels fun. Picking stuff up and throwing it around and smashing things and like defeating monsters using objects that you pick up and have a limited supply of. That all feels good. The room drafting feels interesting. It feels like it could be really interesting if we started kind of gradually drip feeding new rooms in and then having puzzles where you need to get this thing from this room and take it to that room. You know, I need to do the things that prove the concept of the game for me. So I've just spent a lot of time basically adding peril to the game. I would say that has been my focus for the last week, and that is why the red rooms feel so, I don't know, alive, I guess. They have a little ecosystem to them. They have these horrible spore spreaders. They have the egg bats. I've added all of these relics. There's even a relic that is like a little cursed demon coin. It means that every time you smash a jar, you get an additional little kind of cursed ruby coin for every red room you draft. So I'm starting to link the different parts of the game together and think about, okay, if we've got this room as our kind of risky, dangerous room, how do we encourage the player to want to have those rooms? So we're going to have, you know, relics that make it beneficial to have a red room, that kind of thing. My next focus is going to be on the green rooms and doing the same thing there so that they have a kind of character to them and a quality to them where you can sort of learn what is going to be in those rooms. They already have some of that. There is a particular room that you have to spawn to get the axe. There's a particular room that you have to spawn in order to light your torch. And I'm going to have some other stuff. I'm going to have some interactions where there's a particular room with something in that you need to light and you need to take the torch, you know, light it in one room and take it to that other room. So this is all stuff that isn't going to be explained in the game. It's going to be stuff that is there for the player to learn by playing around. It's a risky type of game to make, a game where players have to experiment a lot and learn things for themselves, but it's also just the kind of game design I get excited about. So I've now got a bit of a kind of design pattern for this game where I add a new problem for the player, and it could be like a monster, it could be a thing in a room that needs a particular item, And then as soon as I've implemented that, I then think of a relic that can be a counteraction to that. And this is how power-ups have always worked in games. It is like there is a particular problem at some point in the game, and then we give the player a power-up which allows them to temporarily like break the rules of the game in order to solve that problem more easily. The thing I really like about these kind of Slay the Spire type relic systems is you can have a massive pool of relics, and because the player doesn't see all of them every run, you can't really rely on them. You just sort of get them and then you have to roll with the punches and go, okay, well I got the cursed coin, so I'm gonna deliberately spawn loads of red rooms so I can get extra coins now, that kind of thing. So it's that mix of making deliberate choices, like what rooms you draft and where you put them, and the kind of tactical response of, oh, well, I got dealt this hand and I have to play it in this situation.
Thank you to the patrons. You have enabled this thing to exist. Thank you to the patrons. I put your name on this list. Thank you to the